Okay, good. Ready?
No. Let me just sign back in. Okay, go ahead. Ready? Good evening. Welcome to the Mom to Mom show, brought to you by ECRC's Martoma Productions, live on the Chaldean Moms of Metro Detroit page. My name is Lisa Denha, and I'm your host for tonight, and joining me are Kiera Morris, Michelle Markoz, and Professor Hubert Sanders. And we're here to discuss race relations in the United States today. Panel, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. And I just want to remind our viewers to please feel free to ask any questions that our panel could answer for you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Kiera, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So I am half Chaldean, half Black, and I am married to a Black man, and we have a child together, 9 months, and I don't know.
Where do you work?
Oh, I work at Salon Sky in West Bloomfield. Okay. Yes, hairdresser.
Very nice. And you're newly married?
Newly married. Year. That's new for sure.
Very nice. How many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have one sister, and she lives in New York right now. So.
Very nice. Well, Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Michelle, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Michelle Markoz. I am a mother of 3 wonderful children. They are biracial. Obviously, I'm 100% Chaldean. Their father is Black. I've been in the real estate and mortgage business since '96. That's about it.
And are you still married?
Actually, no. I've been divorced. I've been divorced for 12 years now.
Oh.
Yep.
Well, thank you for being here today to share your story. And also joining us is Professor Hubert Sanders. He is a teacher at Brother Rice. Welcome. He's joining us remotely from home. Professor Sanders, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yes, I'm Hubert Sanders, and I was raised Catholic, and I have the great gift and opportunity to pass on the great gift of our Catholic faith, which has been given to me. I'm able to pour into my high school students at Brother Rice High School. I'm also able to give to Sacred Heart Major Seminary. I give various talks throughout the Archdiocese of Detroit, blessing us in the midst of adversity. And so thank you so much for having me tonight.
Thank you for being here. Thank you. And just for everybody in the panel, everybody watching, there's so much going on in the world today, especially in our country. And I don't think anybody would have predicted this going on, just coming out of COVID-19. But we are here today, and I'm so happy that you guys were able to come and join us to talk a little bit about a very sensitive topic. But I'd like to start, you all gave a little bit of a background about yourselves, but I'd like to direct this question to Professor Sanders. Professor Sanders, you are a professor at Sacred Heart Seminary and a teacher at Brother Rice. How often does race relations and the issue of racism come up during your lessons?
During my lessons, the topic of racism and race relations does come up. It doesn't come up often, if I'm honest, in a direct way. It doesn't come up often, but it does come up because when we are dealing with the great love that the Father has for us in the sending of the Son and the Holy Spirit, it's about meeting Christ in a very personal way. And when I teach the faith, it's not just head knowledge, but how that head knowledge travels to the heart to transform us. And so when I teach, I not only give what we believe and why we believe it, but how it's changed me from within. And with me being a African American in America, I can't avoid certain evils that have affected me as well as the world in general. And so through that means, as we flesh out the faith in our everyday lives, my struggles that I've encountered come up. And through that means racism is addressed.
Where, in your opinion, we know that racism exists, and it has existed. Where does it stem from? And that's kind of open to everybody in the panel who'd like to take that on that question.
I think
I see racism. Oh, I'm sorry.
Is something that's learned. It's something that's, what I mean by learned is that it goes back through the bloodline. I mean, to me, that's where it comes from. It does take someone to kind of stop that vicious cycle, at some point. But yeah, I do believe it is something that goes back way far. It's deep-rooted.
Something that's a learned behavior.
Yeah, absolutely.
Professor Sanders, you were going to say?
Yes, when I look at the evil of racism, and I have to call it that, it's the book of Genesis, where Adam and Eve, they failed to trust God Father. And that's the heart of the temptation in that account. Did God really tell you not to eat of any tree? Because he knows once you eat of it, your eyes will be, and they fell for that lie. And we often fall for that lie. As opposed to trusting God the Father, we feel that we have to make ourselves happy. And what happens at that point? We become the center of our existences, and we fail to receive the gift of God. Now, the ultimate gift of God is a person who's made in the image and likeness of God. When we fail to receive a person, then we are tempted and able to use them as means. And that's when racism comes in. Racism enables us to build up a wall, and we refuse to receive the gifts of people in our lives through categorization by not getting to know them. And when we fail to receive them as gifts, that's when we use them. And this using of the person is at the heart of racism. It's failure to see the dignity of the human person. And that's what we fall into every time when we fail to trust the love of the Father. No, we don't, and we can't make our own selves happy. We have to rely on the gift of the Father. And the ultimate gift are people in our lives. And those people look different, but we can't let the external differences lead to an isolation. We have to let those external differences penetrate our heart so that we can receive people as gifts and ultimately receive the Father as the giver of all good gifts.
And I think this applies not just to skin color. People are judged because of their faith, by their if they have a disability, economic class. With that being said and done, how do we get to the core of the problem and solve this to move forward?
For me, I think people definitely need to realize they have a problem. That's where any progression starts. And a lot of people don't see a problem with it. And that's hard to kind of change their hearts to see that how they perceive other people is wrong. But
have you ever come across anyone that you felt that tension, but then you were able to break the barriers?
Definitely felt that tension, but I don't know if I've changed someone's heart in perceiving music. I don't know. I don't think so.
You don't feel like you have?
No.
How about with you, Michelle?
I feel like that there have been times where it's not more of them being accepting, it's just dealing with it in a sense. Trust me, I've come a long way from, 20 years ago, let's just say. And yes, people have definitely come around. It's really a matter of having them see, that, like for my children, for instance, they're amazing children, just got to get to know them. It's not really the color of their skin. To me, it's their heart. It's their character. But our people just don't see that. It's like they see red. Do
you find it more just in general in society or within the Chaldean community?
I would say mainly with the Chaldean community because society is a little bit more accepting, with exception to obviously what's going on right now. But for the most part, I would say, yes, it is within our community. Yeah, for sure.
Professor Sanders, how about you? What can we do to get to the core of this problem and then to break the barriers?
Well, I think that the first step is simply just being, knowing that we need to be aware that we need to be comfortable being uncomfortable. So often we go through life just in our comfort zones. And our comfort zones really apply when we are in each other's company amongst people that look like us or that talk like us or that think like us. And we've got to know that as Christians, we are called to be comfortably uncomfortable, because that's what it takes to kind of go out of one's comfort zone in order to meet the great gifts that God has prepared for us. And it's you don't do it overnight. It's one relationship at a time. Because if you try to go too fast, if you try to just knock it all out, this reaching out appears fake. It appears, okay, you're just trying to get to know me because you're trying to check your race relations checkbox, but it's got to be one individual at a time. And we have to pray. We can't do this on our own. We can't think that a program is going to fix it. It's being united to the life of Christ. Lord, help me see my neighbor as you see him or her, really. And I know I can't do it. We've got to come face to face with our inability. And that's the first step in moving forward.
Just living in the world that we live in today, there's a lot of tension on social media as it relates to taking the knee and not taking the knee, as well as whether or not white people should apologize to blacks. And that causes another set of tension among people. What can each of you say about that issue?
I think so. Sometimes I've seen it portrayed as like a political stance, like if you're like on one side or the other, like Black Lives Matter or All Lives Matter. And like I feel like it comes down to, it's not a political stance, it's basic human decency.
Equality. Yes.
Like equal rights, human rights.
Right.
Everybody deserves that. And we know
that somehow
the
it has
black
spilled
man,
into becoming a political issue.
right? And like that's not politics, like
It's human decency.
right? Like I don't understand the confusion of that. I don't. In my head, there should be no argument.
And it's unfortunate because sometimes, depending on what party line you affiliate with, people tend to then judge you,
right?
the one that doesn't want to judge.
Sure.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know.
How about with you, Michelle?
I agree. I get a little emotional when you mention social media. It's definitely hard what you see on social media, especially when I have my children, because it's not just that; it's a little bit broader. I think. I'm sorry. Yeah, actually, if you could just, I'm not. Yeah.
Professor Sanders, how do you feel?
Well, social media can be very helpful. Okay, we especially during quarantine time, being able to stay in communication with each other. But we also have to be leery of the inability of social media to effectively communicate. Those are sound bites, clips. And those clips are used to promote various agendas, okay, and things that that we're dealing with that are heartfelt. Oftentimes cannot be captured on social media. So this whole idea of who's responsible for oppression, should this group of people apologize to that group of people? And that's what social media tends, or how it tends to categorize it. It groups people as if they're personal agents. The minute we form a straw man, and that's why I consider it when should the white people apologize to the black people, that kind of thing will never happen, because there's never a single agent behind a group of people. Okay, so what we have to do is tear down that straw man and know that it's based on an individual's response to the world around them. You can't simply jump through a personal experience with them. If you don't have personal contact with them, then refrain labeling a what or a why, because we don't have all the information, and it's impossible to get all the information from a social media clip. But we take that way out because it's the easiest way to get information today. So I think we just have to be careful on judging from the news perspective.
Seems like with all of this, we've lost the ability to have rational and respectful conversations about issues like racism and politics, especially on social media. And
Yes.
what are some ways that people can discuss this rationally? I mean, sometimes just people don't want to listen to another person.
I think it's just it's those both people in the conversation definitely have to have patience and just like
Be open.
yeah, like I feel like no matter what the other person says, you have to just listen and like respond. You can't just react.
Be
Initially.
proactive, not reactive.
Yeah,
That's what I usually say.
I just like I don't know. It just has to stay like a conversation, because it's the same way as like once you get in an argument, if you start yelling, it doesn't get your point across more. You're just louder. They don't hear you.
It's
more,
almost
you know?
like society has even lost the ability to like agree to disagree.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah. I feel
Yes,
the
we
same
have
exact
lost
way
the
as she does.
ability.
It's just a matter of people coming together and being open to want to understand where the next person is coming from.
And a lot of people don't.
They don't. It's yeah.
That's the sad
that's
thing.
the difficult part, is to get them to at least just listen, try to understand, see where I'm coming from.
And
Hear me
sometimes
out.
even the person making the argument doesn't argue constructively.
No.
And then
It's
what is it?
more
You win the war, lose the battle. You know.
Yeah, I like that point of wanting to understand something. Once a person is heard, then you win a hearing. Not that you're trying to win a hearing, but you're trying to really understand. People arguing as a bad thing because it gets heated. And we do need to, I guess, simmer down the heat through prayer. But I don't think we need to lose the sense of, hence we have to be able to articulate it. And we've lost that ability. We live in a world that reduces everything to an opinion, a preference, which means what? We simply have assertions of what we believe, and we don't need to know why we believe it. We just label it our opinion. Once we label it our opinion, that's a safeguard. We don't have to really explain why we believe it. But as human persons, we're made for more than just an opinion. We're made for the truth. And the truth is not just an abstract reality. It's the person of Jesus. So it's an openness to him as he's revealed in others, in what they say.
Very true, Professor Sanders. Kiera, I want to ask you this question. What is it like being brought up biracial in general, and most specifically in the Chaldean community?
That's a tough one. It's hard for sure. It's hard to start because with my grandparents, I didn't really have a relationship with them till I was maybe like 14. I would start going to their house for holidays, things like that.
Before then, you never interacted with
Not
them?
really. Like my mom used to work for him growing up, so we would see him like in the office, but like we wouldn't really interact. And then just me and my sister, we always felt different. We always had a gut feeling. And like recently I learned like there's a reason we have that gut feeling. It's because like we don't feel like everybody else does. Everybody else is comfortable. Like they don't understand where we're coming from. And that's hard to portray to them because they'll never understand, like my cousins or anybody. But even now I still feel like I can't get, in a way I'm like done trying. I don't know if that's.
Do you
like,
have a close relationship with anybody from your mom's side of the family, any relatives?
my first cousins, like we are really close. It's just more so the grandparents. Like they just can't seem to get over it. I don't know what it is, but I can't change their mind. No one can. They grew up the way they did. It is what it is. Like at this point, it's like a do you situation.
Yes. And you're
'Cause,
moving on with your life.
Yeah, I'm just over it.
Michelle, in your case, I have a question to ask you. As Chaldeans, you're Chaldean, you were raised in the community, and we come from a country where we were a minority and persecuted for our faith, even to this day. So why are we not more conscious of this when we're judging another minority community?
I wish I can answer that question.
What do you think?
I think it's that we're so family oriented, we're so stick together ish, that I think it just revolves around that. It revolves around, maybe it's because of, actually I don't have an answer as to why we don't see that in other people. I honestly, I can't answer that. I wish I could, because as godly as we are, as we were raised in the church, you would think that we would be more compassionate, that we would have that love for the next person, regardless of race, religion, like you said. We're all human beings. We're all a product. We're all made in God's eyes. So how God designed us, you can't question that. So to me, I feel like maybe it's just, maybe it's just, I'm trying to come up with a reason as to why we can't be more loving and compassionate and open. I don't know. I honestly don't know. My mom raised us to love, to be compassionate, to be respectful. She never taught us hate. Yes, growing up, marrying a black. In my faith, I still kept the way my children, from the day they were born, they were raised the Chaldean way. They were baptized. They went to catechism. They go to church. They do everything.
You mentioned that your kids know the prayers in Chaldean.
They know all the prayers in Chaldean. They've known that since, I can't even tell you how long. But I teach them love. I teach them compassion. Unfortunately, I tell them, even though we're Chaldean, this is not the reflection of Chaldean with this racism and with hatred in their heart, because it's not how I was taught, so.
Can you tell us a little bit about the reaction from your family when you married? Were they accepting
this
from the
was
beginning?
back in the day, so you know how it was back then. Absolutely not. I was disowned. I was disowned, by my community too. But again, I stayed in faith. I still went to church. I still, walked with God. God walked with me, or how you want to put it. And I just kept moving, because I felt in my heart of hearts that this felt right for me. It was out of love, But our people, they don't see that. They don't see, oh, maybe, she fell in love with someone and, they decided to get married and have kids. I know plenty of Chaldeans. I mean, my parents were divorced, back in the 80s, and that was taboo. So it's just a matter of them wanting to realize that, it's, first of all, it's not the kid's fault, in a sense, and that maybe, she did find love. Maybe this is who God brought her. This is, even though, of course, I'm divorced now, but again, I know plenty that are divorced and even married and unhappy,
Right.
So.
Right. So with that, I want to direct this question to you, Professor Sanders. For the person that is struggling with family members that are prejudiced, what would you say is a good way to approach this person and help them see the world through the eyes of God? After hearing the experiences that Michelle and Kiera have gone through.
The first thing that I would say is, before approaching them, is to approach a God about them, because grace is needed to move the heart. If a person's heart is not open, nothing can force that. And we're not the agents of conversion. And that's what it takes to get someone to change a position or attitude towards a particular person or race. To approach prayer, God first, force grace to be poured out into their hearts. And then after that's been done, then it's a matter of just being yourself and knowing that your self-esteem is not built on being accepted by anyone else. And it's difficult, because we all are made to be accepted. So continue to reach out with various acts of love, willing the good for the other, despite the lashes that we might take. But there's no kind of cookie cutter answer to what that will look like, except if someone is guided by the Spirit of God. And know this, that if a person doesn't accept, or that's a sickness that a person may not even be aware of. And so if we keep that in mind, it'll help us not be so personally defeated by their unacceptance, even though I know that's very difficult. But by God's grace, all things are possible. You know, I grew up in a family that has been affected by racism. And they also taught us that all people are made in God's image and likeness. And the thing is this, the struggles that my family have had with people of other ethnic backgrounds, they never hid those struggles from me. It was always evident and direct that, hey, this is how I'm feeling and I shouldn't feel this way. So my sister and I have a younger sister, we saw that struggle of, hey, this is the way I'm feeling, but yet God is calling me to respond and teach in a different way. And I need God's help to bring me out of this. And so people who are not accepting others in that same kind of way, continue to pray, specifically the rosary for them. Because that's what it's going to take. That in connection with you continuously reaching out, despite what you might get back from them. Because every human heart is made for love. And if you continue to come through with that love, despite the pain that you might experience, and you can't do it, we can't do it with, the Father sent the Son. He endured a tremendous amount of pain, and he says to pick up our crosses, because it's within that cross that victory can be obtained. But it's one step at a time. Hope that helps.
Yeah, very nice. Michelle, your kids just recently were put in a situation on social media. Would you mind sharing that with us?
Sure. It actually came a couple of days after I was invited to be on this panel. I sat my children down. I let them know that I would be coming here. As their mother, I know what they've gone through, with them being half Chaldean. And I told them, I said, I understand. I know your pain as a mother, but I don't know the pain that you guys go through. Anything that you guys want to share in case it's something that you want me to bring to light, let me know. And my son pointed out a situation that actually happened like 2-3 months ago. I'm not sure why. Well, I'll tell you why it took him so long to tell me. He told me that he didn't want me to be upset. He didn't want me to be hurt. So he hid this away from me for that. And it killed me because he showed me this text message. Literally what it boils down to. There are a group of few friends that will start group chats, mainly on Snapchat, and they will invite their friends in, and then they have a couple people go to different other chat sites like House Party, that's the one I kept hearing, and they would recruit people to come into this chat. But it's not just people. They specifically targeted Black children, and once they got in there, they would start dropping the N-bomb or calling them an abid or telling them different ways on how to kill themselves, and it devastated me. I haven't slept since then because I wanted to get to the bottom of how this even happened. What really bothers me is that there were a list of names that I had put out there because I wanted to speak with the parents. I told them that there's no harm coming to these children. They're not in harm's way. I just want to speak to them about what's going on. I'm pretty sure some people saw some snippets here and there, and only one parent, actually it was a relative of a parent, besides the ones that I had reached out to, 1 or 2 of them came to me. And everyone that came to me were devastated. The first thing they said to me is, First of all, I want to let you know, my kid doesn't even swear. They don't even say shut up. They don't even say stupid. And I'm like, okay, wait, let's just slow down real quick, because every kid that I spoke with told me it boiled down to this certain situation. And my thing is how can our teenagers be full of so much hate? I find out today that it wasn't just Black people that they did. They did it for gays, for lesbians, for people who they thought were fat, who they thought were ugly, who were not cool. They would bring them in there just to bully them. I asked each parent, what would happen? What would you feel if my son was suicidal? How would you feel if my son killed himself? How would your child feel? So my thing is, all I want to do is bring awareness, educate your children. I think the problem is that the parents are not educated, because we grew up in this racism, in a sense. We grew up that way. I remember, I'm not saying us as in like, I don't remember my family ever being like that, but don't get me wrong. Of course, I marry outside of my culture, especially Black, to keep it honest, you're disowned. So I feel like we need to educate the parents so they can educate their children. And it's not I can't believe you did this, I'm taking your phone, that's it. They don't have a phone and Snapchat for a weekend, and that's it, you go back to life. Absolutely not. This is something that they need to be educated on. They need to understand that what they say can do harm. And not only that, it's a hate crime. I don't care if it's Black, I don't care if it's lesbian, I don't care who you are. That is a hate crime. When you intentionally lure someone somewhere to violate them, that's a hate crime. That bothers me. It really bothers me. And the good thing is that I've educated my children. I knew when they were born that they were going to have these adversities with our people, especially. And if you heard me earlier, I said, my son, I had to explain to him about, or him having the adversities of being Chaldean, not of being Black. Well, don't get me wrong, of Black too, but I'm talking about with me within our culture. I would think that because we're God-fearing and God-loving people, and we go to church and we pray all day, you know what I mean, that they would be more accepting. But no, it's not, because for some reason, my half Chaldean with the most beautiful heart and soul kids, they're not good enough for you because the color of their skin, you know? It devastates me. No parent reaching out to me is a concern. That should tell you right there where it stops. If no parent's going to say, why is my children's name on that list? Regardless of what it is, why do I see my kid's name on social media? I'm pretty sure family members sent text messages, hey, isn't this your son? No one. Wow. No one. You know, it's sad. It really is sad.
How did you handle it with your son to move forward from this? I'd imagine.
You know what? Because I've been teaching them about racism and adversities and what, you know, I think that helped. And he was like, you know what, Mom? He was like, it's okay, because he knows better. And it's because of, again, what I teach them. I think it all starts at home. I think it's how you teach your children, how they see you. You're a reflection, you know? So, yeah, it was pretty devastating to see that.
I could just imagine, especially somebody coming out to say, and they actually said, you go kill yourself.
They didn't basically say go kill themselves. They gave them descriptions on how to go do it.
Wow.
Yeah. And what bothered me, there was a comment when they lured another Black kid in there, and I actually reached out to him. I found the kid and I asked him, and he sent me snapshots of, you know, conversations. And I told him, I said, you know what? I don't know you. He told me his mom was. I asked him, can you have your mom call me? He said, she's dead. My dad is at work. I said, okay, you know what? I'm not just doing this for my son. I want you to know I'm doing this for you and every other kid that has been bullied by these people, because this is not Chaldean-like. This is not right. It's heartbreaking. It's devastating. I haven't slept in 4 days because of this.
Yeah. I don't blame you there.
I feel like when a parent, when I speak to a parent, like the couple that I talk to, and they're like, well, my kids would never, ever do this. Well, here it is. What are you going to do now? You know? I felt like it was just a slap on the wrist in a sense, and it's heartbreaking.
Would you consider taking it to the schools?
You know, I really don't want to hurt anyone. To me, they're damaged in a sense already. Like, they don't know. And again, some people got upset with me. A lot of people said, take all that down. Like, you're embarrassing people. Really? So if my son killed himself, then what? You know,
I think people don't ask themselves, what is it that you're looking for to be the end result? Like, what do you think would happen?
But it's more like, let's brush it under the rug.
I want to tie in that story with a question that came in from one of our viewers, Priscilla. And just a reminder for anybody that would like to ask any questions, please do so on the show. But Professor Sanders, I want to direct this to you.
Okay.
What advice would you give to parents on how to handle racism both in their actions and in defending others, especially when it comes to comments within our community?
Oh,
After hearing this story,
Sure.
right.
and this comes from Priscilla Steffen.
Okay. Parents, how to handle. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is the practice of, how can I say it? The refusal of, especially when you're around, well, when you're around anyone, but the refusal of talking about a certain group of people when they're not in your presence. That's something that can appear little, but it's huge in setting an example before children as far as addressing or describing a group of people in a generic way when they're not in your presence. Because that is what opens the door for stereotype. That is what opens the door for an us and them mentality. And when we have that divide, that us and them mentality, then we tend to feel good about ourselves by placing others down. And so it starts just in our conversation, when we're in the car, when we're with our children, when we're in the groups of people that we're most comfortable around. And not just what we say, but if we're in a group of people that we're comfortable with and they look like us, and there's an idle comment said about another kind of group, be willing to speak out against it, specifically in front of children, so that they can not just see that you're telling them to act a certain way, but they can see you act in that certain way. But what comes with that is a risk of being ostracized. You've got to be willing to be rejected by those who look like you in order to stand up for those who don't.
Good point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is a very good point. Thank you for sharing that. We also have a question from Renee Hassano, and I'm going to direct this to you, Kiera. It's something that we talked about. Have you ever been bullied from anybody from the Black community?
Not really. No, like my dad's side has always been accepting. There was never any like racial slurs about being Chaldean or like family from Iraq, anything like that. Like they were always pretty open. We were fine. We always played with our cousins. Like there was no issues. Mm-hmm. It was just really the Chaldean side where they see something wrong and there's no way to put it. I don't know if like it's a story like hers, but not really. Not to do with social media, but my daughter, we baptized her in November. She was like 3 months.
And she was baptized in the Chaldean church?
Yeah, a Mother of God. Mm-hmm. And
is that your home church?
Yes. And we were leaving, whatever, and my mom overhears these old Chaldean women talking, and she hears them call my daughter the N-word in church. And
in church.
Mm-hmm. It's okay, Kiera. If you need a minute, we can move on.
For me, my thing is I don't know how you call yourself Christian and do that. I don't care what your age is. Like, you know that's wrong. You're conscious of it, and she's an infant.
Kiera, for you moving forward, you're going to be raising your daughter, and you feel a connection with the Chaldean Church.
Yes.
Obviously, you baptized her at Mother of God for a reason, because you didn't have to.
Right.
Do you plan on raising her to be within the Chaldean community?
Yes, because
Why is that important to you?
I will say it's not so much the Chaldean community, it's I love Mother of God. Like, even though like there are times I walk in and like I get stares, which, you know, I'm there for the same reason you are. Like, I feel at home there, and that's where I really got into Catholicism. I took my communion 3 years ago now, I think. So like I feel a connection to that church, and I want my children to feel the same connection. Like at this point, I look at it like I'm in the house of God and I'm there for him. I'm not looking at anyone. I'm not even going to bother myself with any of that.
Moving forward, raising your daughter, what are the things that you would like to do to make her stronger based on your experiences?
Like right now, me and my husband, we're big advocates for equal rights, human rights. Like, we want to protect the, oh my gosh, I can't think of that phrase right now. Like, we want to help people, and like, I want our daughter to see that she can do that. That, and I hope like with me being raised a certain way, like I'm hoping that like she sees our strength and takes to do something about it.
To make a difference.
Yeah. Like that's all.
Now, a question, your husband is Black. How does he embrace the Chaldean community? Because you are half Chaldean.
Yeah. He loves the Chaldean culture. He does.
He does.
But it's always weird when like we would go to like engagement parties and stuff and people would stare at us, and like I can understand to the point where like, okay, you're the only Black guy there, but then to a point it's like, okay, he's a person, get over it. Like, it is what it is. I don't like he embraces it, but he also embraces like my choices. So like how I told you earlier, where I pretty much done with my grandparents, he's like, if that's your choice, if that's what you want to do, it is what it is. And he's usually the person to tell me like you should talk to them or whatever, but he knows how I feel, so he knows at this point there's really no talking to them.
Do you ever feel like there'll come a time where you can mend things with your grandparents?
I hope so. I
Find
love
it in your
them. I would
heart.
never wish anything bad on them, but I just think I'm tired of, in a way, wasting respect that isn't reciprocated. If they feel the need to reciprocate it at any point in their life, I will happily,
You'll be there.
you know, but I just can't, like, it's just an energy waster. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what to do.
So there's a lot of talk now about white privilege. I wouldn't be able to understand your struggles because I'm not Black. I'm white privileged. I don't view myself that way, but this seems to be the term that's thrown out all
Yeah.
the time. What is your opinion on that? And for you, Professor Sanders, too. We haven't heard from you in a while.
Honestly, I feel that a lot of people feel like, you know, things are a little bit more. Can you ask your question again, if you don't mind?
Just white privilege is thrown out there a lot now on social media, on the news. What is your opinion of it?
I mean, it's very out in the open. I mean, it's a fact. If you look at, I just actually showed her a picture of a white kid and a black kid. Mm-hmm. They both committed the same crimes. One kid, I think, got like a year in probation, and the black kid got like 28 years and like life probation. And I bring that up because even though it's a crime is a crime, I still feel like there's inequality. Is there the white privilege? Absolutely. 100% there is a white privilege, and it doesn't just fall, like you said, for white people, but it's, in a sense, our people too. I think that comes from feeling, what is the
Superior?
word? Not superior. There's another word they feel, say that again?
Entitled?
Entitled, that is the word. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. They feel entitled. And that's where this white privilege comes from. They feel superior. They feel superior maybe because they're proud of their culture or, their religion or whatever the case it is. But, there has to come a point where you say we're all equal. We can talk about oppression. We can talk about all the differences between white privilege and why everyone else falls out of that category. But facts are facts. Our country is based on white privilege, to be honest. And if you meet a certain status, you fall in there too, regardless. Yeah.
When I think about the phrase white privilege, what comes to mind is this, that a white person, simply by seeing it all the time, when you are in a majority, when you enter a room, you see yourself, and no one is intentionally. It's in the atmosphere. You constantly see yourself in the artwork. You see yourself in TV shows reflected in a good light. It's just your dignity is being affirmed. Whereas if you're in a minority group, that very fact of having to look for yourself being reflected around you provides a kind of tension. And sometimes you're conscious of it, sometimes it's in your subconscious. But it wears on you. I mean, I was raised in a Catholic grade school, which was primarily white. Okay, I'm a minority, a double minority. I went to a Catholic high school, all white. Not that my all white grade school or my all white high school attempted to keep me down, but they just weren't reflecting me in a consistent fashion as my white counterparts, as their identity was being reflected back to them and affirmed. And so I got to a point where in my college days, I said, I want to go to an all-black university. And so I went to Xavier University, which is an all-black Catholic school in New Orleans, Louisiana. And there are certain things that I didn't have to deal with there. My skin color was constantly being reflected back to me. I saw myself in the artwork. That unseen tension wasn't there. Now, I'm not saying that was a utopia, but it's one of those white privilege. And we can't ignore the history of this country. Okay, we can't ignore that. Where minorities have been enslaved. That plays a big part in the fabric of those. So that plays into this whole idea of white privilege. And I think the most a serious danger is for the white person to not be aware that they're experiencing the world in that way, that their dignity is consistently being affirmed. If a person is not aware of that, then that's a very dangerous kind of sickness. I mean, to actually think that everything's okay and that a kind of superiority should prevail, to not be aware of that is very dangerous. You know, in order to act against it, you've got to develop a kind of compassion. In other words, an ability to suffer with the other, to walk in someone else's shoes. And when you make that effort to walk in someone else's shoes, simply by, as we stated earlier, just listening to someone, it goes a long way. I remember walking into a church, an all-white church in the suburbs of Detroit, and the pastor, white priest, I was so impressed with his homilies. And so I went to attend one of his masses and I heard him preach. And I waited to meet him after mass. And as I approached him, I got together what I wanted to say. Well, thank you, Father so-and-so. I'm so impressed. And your homilies, they feed my spirit. And the first thing he did was he reached out and he shook my hand in a way that I'm used to shaking my African-American brother's hands. And he gave me, it was very simple, just a little handshake kind of thing. And then he looked at me and he smiled and said, "You didn't know I could do that, did you?" I said, "No, I didn't know." It's just a little thing like that.
Yeah.
That goes a long way, just being able to enter into someone else's situation. In order to do that, you got to be aware of what, quote unquote, is being referred to as white privilege. And that's not necessarily it can be used as a kind of evil thing, but oftentimes it's simply just being a part of the majority and having your culture being reflected back to you all the time, which will build your confidence a lot more than others that don't have their culture reflected back to them.
Very good point, Professor Sanders. We are coming to the end. I have one question I'd like to ask that really deals a lot with what's going on today with the protests and the riots. Most people would agree that the protests are valid and understood, and it's what makes our country better. I believe everybody should be able to voice their opinion and really fight for their rights. But at this point, the looters and the vandalism of property are turning the protests violent, and it's what's escalating the division between the races. So many are upset that leaders are not speaking up against this. Some that are arrested were not charged. To me, I feel that this is one time I believe so many in the country are on the same side, and I feel like the protests are hijacked right now.
I was going to say that's exactly how I feel.
It's so sad for our country. Well, and this is just my opinion, but how do you feel?
I completely agree with you, and I do feel that they're being hijacked, and I feel that they're being hijacked to portray an image against black people, making it seem like that they're destroying their cities and they're doing this, that, and the other, when in reality, I mean, not to get into politics or anything, but I feel that it's strategic. And it's done for political reasons more than anything. And it's sad because it's continuing to create that divide. I mean, if you think about the riots from '68, you would think we've come a long way, but to be honest with you, everything lay dormant up until I feel that since this presidency, it's just been left out in the open, and it's like a free-for-all with the hate along with whatever else that comes with it. So, yeah. It's sad, it's disgusting for them to even try to portray that when everyone's been fighting for is equality. And like she said, human rights, simple human rights.
And I do believe this at this time, and it's sad to say this time, it shouldn't be this way, but so many were on the same side. Everybody believed the same thing, but the vandalism and the looting are taking over.
The thing is I definitely am against rioting and looting. In a way, I feel is strategic, and then in a way I feel like it's a cry for help from people who are doing it, because I feel like they're trying to show that this country values goods and services over humans. Like, they don't care about us. Like, a lot of people in this country, they don't care about people that aren't like them. And we're fighting, we're protesting, we're trying to do what's right, we're standing up for what we believe in, and then here comes the rioters and looters. And
But can you be appalled at both? Can you be appalled at what happened to George Floyd, but then also be appalled with the looting
It's
and
anger,
the rioting?
I feel like it's-
1000%.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Like, for certain.
Not to say that they're
Yeah.
equal,
No, not at all.
but you can be appalled at
Yeah.
both.
Absolutely. Yes.
The thing is I know some businesses are small businesses, and some people don't have insurance and things like that. But
And many of them were from minority communities.
but
Right.
sometimes, like, the way I feel like it's seen is that these things can get replaced, these lives can't. And like, I feel like, I don't know, things can get replaced. You're not hurting. Like, okay, you have to rebuild a building. You can't rebuild this life.
It's trauma. I mean, really, if you think about it, especially a lot of the younger generation don't know how to deal with that. Don't know how to deal with trauma, past traumas, the traumas that they hear of their aunts, their uncles, their grandparents, and their great-grandparents, of everything that they've gone through, and, you know, being stuck in that hole, in that bubble. It's
It gets passed down too.
yeah, it
like
gets
the trauma,
it does.
so.
Professor Sanders, what is your take on this?
I absolutely agree that you can be appalled at what has happened with police brutality. You can be, and also at the same time being appalled at the looting, the rioting. You know, sometimes you hear a kind of justification of it as a cry to gain attention. You know, if you're not going to listen in a peaceful way, then maybe you'll listen when we affect your pocketbook. I hear that kind of justification, but that justification doesn't make any sense. It's the very thing that you are protesting, you're perpetuating with violence. And also keep this in mind. Some people don't even care about the injustice that was done. They're using it to simply get goods. Don't leave that out either. You know, people are taking advantage
And
of
at the end
or
of the day,
having.
I feel like it's sad for the country, and it's bringing more of a divide than it is actually bringing an awareness. But I do want to thank
Exactly.
everybody for being here today. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and your experiences. I want to thank the audience for tuning in. I feel like an hour flew by. We could go on for hours. And I really appreciate you being here with us. And Professor Sanders, I appreciate you taking the time out. I know you're busy and with your family to be here with us remotely. Thank you, viewers, for joining us. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them on the Chaldean Moms page, and hopefully the panel will be available to answer. And I can relay any messages to Professor Sanders, too. Thank you for being with us. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.